welcome. I'm so excited to have you. Okay, so what we're doing today to my beautiful community is we're going to be speaking a little bit about money, but mostly about masculinity and magnetism and what high value men or a high value man actually wants. So this is not just going to be another polarity chat, because I love talking about, masculine, feminine polarity, but this is more of a real sort of raw heart meets wealth conversation about what truly attracts a high value man and why magnetism might not just be about looks or about the bank balance. So interesting story. I met Michael by total divine accident. My darling son was photographing his car, I don't know, Ferrari or Lamborghini or something, in Double Bay. And we had a very good chat.
They're all the same, huh?
Wealthy old son.
Yeah.
John. And we spoke a lot about wealth polarity and what men really want. And I know a lot of my women, we often talk about this, so I'd love to hear it from like the horse's mouth. So Michael is a quite young, self-made, emotionally aware and quite open man, calling in his values-aligned queen. That's how I like to sort of see you. And we're going to dive in, but I'd love to just before we start in earnest. So when I say the word magnetism, what comes to mind for you?
It's not a word that I really frequent or am exposed to, so I haven't given it much thought. I would assume, at least for me, maybe it's putting yourself in a position where things are likely to come to you rather than you desperately searching for it. That's what it might mean to me.
Yeah, I like that. And that would, when you flip that about a woman that's trying to be magnetic, how could we reframe that? So don't try so hard, basically.
Yeah, and well, potentially like how it is that you're trying might be more important. I mean, if you're referring to like finding a partner, I think oftentimes, at least from my perspective, women try in the wrong areas. So like I was talking to a friend about this the other day I'm going to speak generally here. So like, I hope people can appreciate that I can't put a preface on every single word that I say. So some things might seem offensive. They don't mean to be. It's just that for being efficient, I'm going to have to speak in generalities.
Yeah, we got it.
So
yeah.
I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about how like women, when they get really dressed up and have all this designer stuff, how it can actually have a repelling effect. At least that's been the case for me, because not that it's always the case, but I think at least initially, before I get the chance to speak to someone, I start to think that perhaps this might be a high maintenance relationship. And so sometimes I think putting so much effort into how you look has a detrimental effect rather than a positive one. Obviously, there's a fine balance. Like, you don't want to put no effort into how you look, whether or not you're a male or a female. But I think there's probably a little bit too much emphasis that's put on that for females in general.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. So I'm just going to go straight to the cuts to the chase. We will speak about the origins shortly, but just because we're on topic. So does that how do you feel about cosmetic surgery in that angle, like women that are quite doing the work externally? What do you think about women that have had a lot of work? If you want.
Yes, sure. So I don't personally love a lot of work. There are people that do. So it changes on an individual basis. That said, I think that what's most important for me, even if, let's say, I was talking to a woman that did have a lot of work or that was interested in getting work done, I wouldn't be as, for lack of a better word, repulsed by it. That's too strong of a word, but I wouldn't be repulsed by it if I could see that it wasn't compensating for a lack of interest in their internal. So what I mean by that is, if there's an exclusive interest on how they look externally, but without an attempt to focus on what is internal, then I would find that quite unattractive. Like, I appreciate that women might want to look pretty and feel pretty. That's fine. But in the absence of doing anything internally, I find that a pretty obvious display of, for me, unusual priorities.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, in other words, if there was a woman that wanted to get work done, but I could see that she was clearly also interested in the internal, then I wouldn't find that as much of a deterrent. It would kind of neutralize one another, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so the inside has to balance the outside, basically. As much as you're doing, internally, there's permission to do externally. Yeah, I just find that interesting with what's going on in the world.
The one other thing I would add as well is, for me, and I think this is probably true for other men, I think that it's more impressive when there's a serious attempt at trying to adjust their beauty through more natural means as well. So if I use a very obvious example of like a woman that wants to like get implants, but isn't doing anything to actually improve their physical state through exercise or nutrition, that's not attractive to me. I think both are fine, or in isolation, just focusing on more natural remedies. But in isolation, personally, like for me, when I see women that use all the makeup, use all the products, get all the surgeries, but don't exercise, don't train, that demonstrates a pretty, unusual set of priorities that I'm assuming on them.
Yeah, no, we'll go back to that just because we had a great chat about values as well. But before we do, because I mentioned wealth as well, so I was looking at your website earlier today, and before the Ferraris and the wealth, can I ask what life was like for you? I would love to sort of get into your head a little bit about when things weren't working for you and what shifted, just because I sort of want people to know your story, that you didn't come from wealth. It's not as if you're sitting here on truckloads of cars and millions of dollars from the outset. I really loved your story that you shared with me at the first time we spoke.
Sure. So I'll try to do this as briefly as possible.
We've got 20 minutes. Let's go.
Because I'm condensing my whole life into a few sentences, right? But if I can do it as quickly as possible, I'd say I don't remember exactly how I felt when I was young, like before 12 or 13. I have some memories. I vaguely remember being shy, anxious, although I for sure didn't know what they were at that age. And then from about 13 or 14 onwards, I experienced very substantial depression, anxiety, and suicide ideation. I didn't know that this was unusual. I didn't really give much thought as to why it was even happening. I just knew that's what I was experiencing. It wasn't until I was 18 when I was in a psychology class for university and the professor was outlining all of the criteria for anxiety and depression. And it was in that moment when I realized that this is something I'm definitely dealing with. So I reached out to my sister through a letter. She took me to a doctor, and I ended up filling out a questionnaire. It was one of the pretty extensive questionnaires that they get you to fill out. And the doctor said, oh, this is like it was technically the best result, but actually the worst result that she'd ever seen, meaning I scored the highest, but in a test that you don't really want to smash, right? So I had very, very bad results. And it was the worst you'd ever seen, and it made sense to me because I felt horrible. I think that it was something like 3,000 plus days. I think there was 3 days where I didn't desperately not want to be alive.
Wow.
And it's because I know that because I literally counted them. But every other day I went to bed wishing that I wouldn't wake up, and I would wake up wishing that I hadn't. So it was quite a terrible life. And then because of that, I didn't have a full-time job. I struggled, but no one really knew why that was. Intellectually, I was always capable. And so I think that gave me some breathing space, because if I did try at something, then it was relatively easy for me. So that led to me trying some things enough to just allow my parents to leave me alone while I heavily indulged in video games up to like 16 hours straight. And I could do that very easily.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, like very easily. Like I would game and, well, sorry, maybe not 16, maybe realistically 14 or 15. Because I
was just stressing for a parent to hear that.
Yeah. But even still during that period, I managed to go to the gym. Fortunately, it was one of the healthy things that I was doing for myself. But throughout this period, there would be days where I wouldn't wash, like I wouldn't shower, I wouldn't brush my teeth. I just wasn't looking after myself at all. Eventually, after doing random certificates and jobs, I ended up in the mode industry at about 25, and that was the first full-time job that I had, and that's where the whole trajectory of my life shifted. And I think part of that was due to finally having an avenue where I could imagine a horizon that was worth moving towards. Because prior to that, when I would speak to people about their work, it was usually, I hate my job and I don't enjoy what I do. I don't find it fulfilling. I don't get paid that much money and I'm in financial stress. Like I grew up in Thelmy, which is kind of like a country town. So I live in Double Bay now, but I didn't grow up around affluence or like huge amount of riches. So there was, even though most people middle class and doing fine, there weren't people that were absolutely smashing it and had great stories to tell. And because I'm so logically minded, I extrapolated that forward and thought, well, if that's what I'm going to experience, I definitely don't want to be alive. Like, if that's what I have to look forward to, then I'm not interested in the future. And when you're not interested in the future, obviously it's difficult to invest in anything that will give you a future. So, kind of like a negatively snowballing series of events that happened for me. It was only by complete chance that I ended up in the mode industry. I didn't expect it to be what it turned out to be for me. I only said yes to it because I knew that I needed to say yes to a job so my dad would calm down. Well, not calm down, he was always calm, but give me some space knowing that I was at least doing something. And again, by complete chance, it ended up changing my entire life. So after that, I did very well for a company. I made them millions and then eventually ended up leaving. And I've been fortunate enough to make myself millions as well, to the point where now I'm largely financially free. I'm not ridiculously rich or anything like that, but if I wanted to retire, I could. And that's largely because I don't have major aspirations to live in like $100 million house or anything crazy. So,
But you're also 32, and
yeah,
that's pretty impressive. So
yeah, maybe.
what was that driving force? Just briefly, that decision where you said, I do want to live, because I think you told me you gave yourself like 7 years to become completely financially free, which is exactly what you did, 25 to 32.
Yeah, so I didn't expect that to be the case, but that's what it turned out to be. It was probably even younger. It was probably, I started when I was 25, and I was probably like, I could have soft retired, meaning like I had enough to from my real estate portfolio to retire on a very basic lifestyle at maybe 30 or 31.
Yeah, right.
And uh, the reason I didn't is because I find my work fulfilling. There's a saying like if you're lucky, I guess, your work works on you more than you work on it. So what the driving force for me was that I had like a hell, and I'm kind of ironically very lucky for this because it still exists for me today. I had like a hell that I was running away from, which was what I knew I was capable of if I didn't do the things that I felt that I needed to do. And equally as important, I had like a heaven that I was trying to move towards, which was financial freedom, being able to look after myself and my dad in the case that anything happened to him or any other close family members or friends. So uh, I use the analogy of like, if I asked you to just run 100 meters right now, you'd be like, why? You wouldn't do it. But someone held a gun to your head, you wouldn't ask any questions, you'd just shoot. And so it kind of felt like I had this gun pointed to the back of my head because if I didn't achieve the things that I felt I needed to achieve, I would end up in a very bad place. But I was also running towards a pot of gold. And so there was double sources of motivation there for me.
Yeah, I was
Which
going to say you've got outwards and inwards. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So that pushed me to do things that maybe I couldn't even do now.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. And you did it, you achieved it. So you're sitting here now in a very successful, essentially 32-year-old. So what do you think, so as a high value man, can I ask, what do you think, why do you think you're struggling to like meet a high value woman? Because I've got high value women struggling to find high value men. And I'm just flipping this around saying, what's going on here? Why? What do you think that? What are you looking for that you're not finding in women?
So the first thing I would say is I think people should be careful to assume that someone's high value just because they're high net worth. I think sometimes people conflate the two. So just because someone has money doesn't mean they're high value. I think high value should be subjective in the sense that what I have to offer isn't actually high value to, I think, most women, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because being extremely driven comes at a very serious cost. So, like my last relationship, and she's a beautiful person, I'm not knocking her at all. But like one issue that we had, and completely fairly so, was that I had no interest in going away and doing all of these ordinary things that
Right.
most couples do because I'm ridiculously driven and I don't take days off.
Right.
So I think it's important to question whether or not you want a high net worth man.
Mm.
And if that is something that you want, really coming to terms with what that might look like in reality, not what that looks like on Instagram.
Or
Uh,
fantasy. Yep.
yeah.
Mm.
And then if that isn't the case, that's not what you're after from a female's perspective, realizing what high value actually is. Because you can have all of the money in the world, but that doesn't make you immune to divorce. And I know that for sure, and everyone knows that for sure. And yet still they run after money. Like there's a reason why so many men that are worth tens of millions of dollars still have a divorce. It's because money does not make you immune from that marriage breaking down. And a lot of the times, in my opinion, the reason why these marriages break down is because they've gone after a high net worth man with high net worth characteristics,
Mm.
which they didn't actually recognize would be quite hurtful and disengaging in the reality of their relationship. So, in theory, I think it's interesting to be with a successful man. It sounds cool, it looks cool. But when they don't want to go away with you because they're working, or they don't want to go and spend time with your family, your extended family, because in their mind they have more important things to do, that can be quite hurtful. And I think that is the reality for a lot of people that are extremely obsessive and driven to do the things that they want to do.
Great answer. But flipping that, what would make, what's a high value woman for you that you would be looking at? You know, are you saying someone that doesn't have many expectations of you or from you?
Yeah. So it's individualistic, and I don't think that most people have even thought about this properly.
Mm.
So I think if you ask most men, they wouldn't know how to answer it, and if they did, they'd give some kind of default stupid answer that they've heard on YouTube or Reels or whatever.
Yep.
For me, it's things that I can't actually access through the resources that I already have. So I've had women that I've been dating or women that were interested in me that were like, oh, cook and like clean and this is the kind of housewife that I'll be. But I can get all of those things on demand. Like I have money, so all of those things don't really have that much value to me. That doesn't mean that if I have a partner, I wouldn't want them to do those things, or if they wanted to do those things, I wouldn't let them do that. But what it means is the things that are important are the things that I don't have immediate access to. And so an example of that would be, and again, this is for me, would be compassion, loyalty, and nurture. So that's what I can't get out of business and that I can't just buy. And so inherently that they're the things that have the most value.
So you're now talking about the feminine. This is where we get the polarity. So the masculine attracting the feminine, the things that you can't with or don't have time or don't want to or don't feel that you're able to pull out of yourself, which is that compassion. What was the second one? Sorry.
I said compassion, loyalty, and nurture, but equally so. I would say I've lost the word, but anyway, it's effectively those things, and maybe a few other things, but off the top of my head, they're the things that are the most important.
So, but I'm trying to make it from like a polarity point of view. So the minus and the plus, the mag. So do you think that a woman's softness or receptivity, would that complement your drive? Would that affect your drive or be a distraction?
No, it would be helpful. So the thing that is most important to me is if I have a partner, I want them to complement my life by being a place of softness and not chaos.
Yeah.
I think one issue that I have with, and look, I'm not perfect, but let me say, I'm not perfect at all. Like, I have a lot of things wrong with me, so I'm going to sound harsh, but
Mm.
I'm just telling you what my opinion is. So the biggest issue that I have with women, in general in relationships, is that they add so much chaos to my life. And the second that I get a sense that someone is going to add chaos, I don't care how hot you are, I am just not interested at all. Like, peace of mind. I even have a saying that I tell my staff, my team, and people that I collaborate with: peace of mind over profit. If something is profitable but it's going to disturb my peace of mind, I'm at the point
Mm.
where I'm not interested anymore. So this extends and bleeds over into my relationships as well. If the relationships that I have, whether they're intimate or just with friends, if they add chaos into my life, I'm done. I'm not interested in that. It can be gone. And for whatever reason, I think that it's almost become trendy to be psychotic. Like, uh, more so probably with younger women. Like, there's a lot of things on social media where it's almost popularized to be a lunatic and like be manipulative and
Mm.
do all this weird shit. And
Mm.
like, that's just not on. I don't think that's a good way to present yourself as an attractive partner, but for whatever reason people think it's funny and quirky. I don't. I'm not into it.
So what kills polarity for you? So if
What
you're all the right boxes, other than chaos. So we've got chaos. If someone's like too chaotic for you,
Mhm. Yeah.
what else would kill chaos for you?
See, like, a lot of men don't like a masculine leaning woman. I personally don't care. Like,
Yeah.
I don't mind if a female has masculine traits, but as long as she's not more masculine than me. So being assertive or too assertive, I think, can be, for lack of a better word, annoying.
Yeah.
Bossed around, whinging a lot, like these kinds of things. I know they sound typical, but like, they irk me a bit. But bossiness is probably a big one. I don't think that in general men like to be bossed around by their partners, but a lot of the times, or some of the times at least, that can be the case, and that can cause resentment. So bossiness, and I'd say bossiness would be a big one.
And leaning just too much into that masculine. But
Yeah,
that feeds back into, from a health point of view, you want someone who's exercising, you want someone who's looking after herself, the
yeah,
outside matching the inside. But just quickly
yeah,
going, when we talk about peace as well, just because you mentioned that before, having that chaos over peace, if you're working on, I know you meditate, so, well, I think you do.
yeah.
Surely your inner peace would be able to affect your peace. So not enabling someone to be too chaotic around them, having enough sort of influence on them so that they too can be calm. Because I don't know if they're, I don't know if living in that illusion that any relationship can be really peaceful
Hmm.
is realistic.
Uh,
Maybe
okay, you're saying that it's unrealistic to expect a relationship to be completely peaceful?
completely. If you've got an ability to navigate your own, be peaceful within yourself, surely you're
Mhm.
able to influence peace around you. And if you're the masculine, so if you're leading and being respected and providing, surely you'll
Mhm.
be able to keep the peace in the household. No, it's just a thought.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I
Mm.
haven't experienced it, but I'm sure it's possible,
Not
definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay, this is really good because a lot of some of the questions my women were
No,
were
ask whatever. I don't care. I'm not easily offended. It was funny. Someone took a video of me in my Lambo, and I got tagged in it, and I seen it, and there were people like just talking shit about me. I just thought it was hilarious. So I don't mind if people have good or bad things to say. I'm open to any criticism or any questions.
our community's loving. Like, if you follow me, yeah, we're on the
Okay.
alternative spectrum here. This is why I found you really intriguing, because you did, in the conversation that we had, you mentioned spirituality, you mentioned values,
Hmm.
really, because I work with a lot of values, and I was really interested specifically what you said around values. So when a woman's values don't match, not necessarily match yours,
Yeah.
they're you. So I was going to ask you about values. Just it's been half an hour, so let's wrap up soon. But
Hmm.
also women misunderstand about the masculine? Because they're the two questions that I get asked quite a lot in my community of women.
So just to clarify, you're asking me what exactly about values? You want me to explain what?
Oh, the way you're explaining values to me, that sometimes there was a mismatch of what you valued versus what a woman
Yeah.
valued. And then, you said a lot of women didn't know their values.
Yeah, and this isn't just a female thing. I think humans in general don't spend too much time with introspection, and so they don't actually know what they want. They end up in these relationships where after 10 years they come to the realization that they're with someone that doesn't share the same values or vision as what they have. And so they need to separate, and so they should, because if you don't share the same vision and values as someone, you're going to have a very hard time staying with them. It's possible. I just don't think you'll enjoy your life. So I think,
Unless your values morph into one through
yeah,
work.
yeah. I mean, hard to do, but uh, I think quite often, even if someone bends and folds, that can fester resentment, because deep down, like if it's a true hard value, I think that's something that you can't just push away and morph. You know, it's the circle into the triangle kind of thing. Like you can submit and follow someone, but if it's really not in alignment with what it is that you want out of life, I think eventually that will cause point for concern.
We
So
talk about crossing your value to meet your needs. There's only there's only a certain point you can do that before you become resentment, and then that resentment, anger, hostility grows.
yeah. So I mean, my values, I think they need to be looked at in different points. So like there's the relationship itself. So like what your expectations are from the relationship, but then also what your expectations are out of life.
Yeah.
One easy example I'll give of this is that when it comes to money, like money is a big thing for people. It's the cause for one of the main causes for divorce. Is that if you're with someone that wants to spend money and you're a saver, that's going to be a constant cause for friction.
Mm.
Like you've got an Explorer and you've got a Hunter. That's going to cause friction. So having an idea of what your ideal life that you're both kind of working towards, and seeing whether or not you can come to an agreement where they can be like both fit, I think is a really good starting point. And as far as values, not everything needs to be perfect. Like I'm someone that likes to be on time, and I say something and I do it.
Yep.
I don't need the person I'm with to have to be as extreme with those things. But like there are some basic ones that need to be met, like having respect, the way that you speak to one another, loyalties, providing that's something that you value. Just really basic things that I think sometimes people allow to fall away for whatever reason.
Yeah, I like that. I do have a question which you may not find. You said you find nothing offensive, so let's go. Sula, why did you buy a Lamborghini? Is it a status symbol?
Yeah, like I would be completely ignorant to think that I would have bought it if I was on an island by myself. I've thought about that myself because I try not to be an egomaniac and I try not to be narcissistic, but we all exist on that spectrum to a degree. So you need to be honest with yourself and recognize what parts of your personality that are less favorable and just know how to tame them. There wasn't just that. Like it is a status symbol, but it's not as simple as that. I'm extremely introverted and I don't like talking to people, at least approaching people. So for me, it sounds pathetic, but it's almost like a social magnet. It's allowed me to meet a lot of people that have ended up having a very positive impact on my life. So even this situation is a pure example of that. My favorite thing about the car. I bet you get heaps of girls. I'm like, no, because one, when I'm anxious, like I'm a naturally anxious person, so I get out of the car. I don't like people looking at me. I look at the ground and I just go to where I need to go. But two, the kind of person that you're generally going to attract, not always, but often, if we're talking about like females, are going to be women that now have that as an expectation for you. So if I meet a woman, I don't tell them that I've got a Ferrari and a Lambo or that I can retire. That's stupid because I'm setting the expectation that that's all that I have to give. So I've never used it to try and get women. I've never told women about my cars unless somehow they've figured it out or asked. But I think that it acts as social proof, and it's a talking point for people in the street that you might get to meet, like yourself. And my favorite thing by far, my absolute favorite thing, without a doubt, and the reason why I'll never not have an exotic, at least
Mhm.
likely will never not have one for a long period of time, is the joy that I can give kids. Because when I'm walking down the street, no one stops to talk to me. And thank God for that, because I think being famous would be incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
But when I've got that car, kids will come up to me and I get to put them in that driver's seat and let them take a photo. And their parents tell me that just made their day. And I tell them, if I can, I try to tell them, look, be nice to your friends, work hard, little words of advice. And maybe 99% of them will never remember a single word that I say, but one of them will. And when they're 16 or 17, they're going to remember that guy told me that if I work hard, I apply myself, and I'm nice to people around me, that I'll be successful. And so that's what I'm going to do. So it's an avenue for me to be a positive impact on some of the people that I interact with.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what impacted me when we spoke about it before was when you said that you didn't have, what's the word? Attachment.
Attachment.
Yeah, so you don't, like, it's not something that you stare at and wash every single day outside, and you're not scrubbing the wheels, that you
No.
list it, you buy it. There's non-attachment, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, like one of the kids was talking to me, and just in passing, I said, like, I only drive it once a week, and it's purely just to go to that spot so I can let kids jump in there, take photos, take them for a spin. I don't go where I met you. I don't leave that area. I don't drive it around. And he goes, well, how do you get around? I said, well, I've got another car that I can drive, or I just walk. So I'm not, every chance that I get, like, trying to drive that thing around. It's annoying and not practical. Like, it's extremely quick car in roads that you can do 50 k's an hour in. It's an illogical purchase, but there are fortunate parts to owning
Yeah,
one.
you are in Australia with speed cameras, yeah.
Yeah.
I just got a really interesting question. What do you wish you could have told your younger self? The one thing I just want to quickly jump in is out of the whole conversation we had, what I told my son was the thing you spoke about, martial arts, that discipline. I've been trying to push him into martial arts, but coming out of mum's mouth versus coming out of your mouth, completely different impact.
Yeah.
So all our kids have been to martial arts. That would be amazing. But just going back to that, what do you wish you could have told your younger self? That was from Sanity.
So for me specifically, it would have been that things can get better. And an example of that being true, I think I might have actually told you this story, but whenever I'd go on the internet, once I figured out that I was depressed and living this horrible life and had a kind of title for it that I could search, I would go online and I would look for stories on Reddit and other forums of people that had depression, anxiety, suicidality. And it was, I guess, on brand, full of people that were depressed and didn't really have anything positive to say. So I thought that I was trapped in this existence, and that was further depressing because I could not find one example, literally not one example,
Wow.
that told me that things will get better and I have the capacity to live a life that I enjoy. So at best, I thought, and this is based off the things that I would read, that it's possible that I might just learn to manage it better. And that wasn't exactly encouraging for me. That wasn't enough to really inspire me to want to be alive and to not end things at some point. So once I was talking to this girl, and she told me that one of her friends dealt with similar things as myself. And long story short, I ended up finding out that she was okay, that she ended up living an ordinary life. And that was like a complete mind shift for me, because up until that point, I didn't think it was a possibility. So if I could talk to myself, I would say things can get better, and there are real life examples of that being the case. Don't give up, do your best. Your dad loves you, and so do people around you, even if at times doesn't feel like that. Because unfortunately, when you're depressed, your entire vision, your entire lens that you look at, that you perceive the world with, is muddied. It's completely dirty. You can't see properly. So anything that you see is being seen through this lens of like thick depression.
Yeah.
So you would have these thoughts of well, I would have these thoughts that weren't necessarily rational, in that people wouldn't come to my funeral. I wouldn't want them to be at my funeral anyway. Like, thinking about my funeral is something that I did a lot. And that, like, no one would care, and after a few days, like, people would forget who I was. All these kind of crazy things that definitely weren't the case, but when you're in that state of mind, you will, at least for some people, start to think that way. So for that reason, that's what I would tell myself.
So things can get better. Things will get better. Things did get better.
Yes, and just because you perceive things to be a certain way isn't necessarily how they are. It can just be a reflection of the lens that you're looking through.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And just segueing into what you're actually offering now, like what, because I know you've got your car business, a very successful car business, but you're also doing some kind of mentoring. Can you just give us a little bit of a lowdown on that?
Yeah, so I'm doing mentoring for preferably it's going to be high functioning people that are doing particularly well in their life, but not with their health. Because I think quite often people start to sacrifice their well-being in order to further pursue their business or career endeavors. And I think that's a mistake that eventually they will have to recognize. So I think trying to help people in that space I find very fulfilling. And I also would like to help people in that 15 or like 13 to 25-year-old age bracket that feel the way that I did, that are stuck in video games, and that's their only source of escapism from the pain that they experience on a day-to-day basis. Not only that, I would also like to help the parents, because I think there's a huge disconnect between parents and their children, to the point where they think their children are being disobedient, but they're not. They're just sad. So it's not a good feeling when you're deeply hurting inside, and the people around you that have authority over you are trying to strip you from the one thing that's making you feel okay, and calling you lazy because that's all you want to do.
Which so I think computer games, right?
Sorry?
Which in your case was the computer games.
Yeah, and I think it's true for a lot of people, that they spend all this time on the computer games, and it's like, that's not normal behavior. So why? Instead of just saying get off them, maybe parents should start to question like why that is the case. If you live an ordinarily happy life with high self-esteem, you don't play computer games all the time. You don't. Yeah. So it's a consequence of how these kids are feeling inside that encourages them to spend so much time on these devices. At least that's my opinion for a lot of people.
Oh no, that's wonderful, and that's another reason that I'm finding this so fascinating. So, are you saying that you're open to working with sort of later teens, 15 to 25-year-olds?
Yeah, for sure. Like they're the two things. Like they're very different, but either like professionals seeking excellence, but not really sure how to navigate looking after themselves at the same time, as well as that cohort of people that I think that I can relate to. And maybe give insight to their parents.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's fantastic. And you also said that you just recently did a wealth podcast or something, that you were just interviewed around wealth, because then obviously if my community, anyone in my community is struggling with, we talk a lot about sovereign wealth as well. Is that something you recommend, the podcast you did?
Yeah, well, I hope so. I haven't heard it yet, but hopefully it's okay. There's a company called InvestorKit, and I've done the majority of my investing in real estate through them. I'm very good friends with the owner of that business, Arjun Paliwal, and he has a podcast called Property Nerds, where they go over different insights into real estate, as well as speaking to some of their clients within their success stories. So I went in there and spoke a bit about how it is that I did what I did, and also what I'm planning on doing in the future.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so I'll link to that after we're done. I'll stick that onto my profile. And if you're a woman listening to this right now as well, and if you want a little bit of help, whether you think you're too much in your masculine, or you're overperforming, over-giving, over-trying, or trying to attract, the wrong kind of men, which I find that's a lot of my clients, they're always attracting the wrong men, because that same wound, that same pattern keeps repeating. And I really like what you said around don't like don't overdress, meaning the labels to the hilt, because then you will be perceived potentially someone that's just way too demanding, just from your experience. But I like how you said that. And if you are going to do external work, balance it with the internal work.
Yes.
Don't just do one thing. If you have to, like, if you decide not to go natural. So yes, I offer my community 3 free discovery calls as well this month, just to follow this up, talk about this incredible topic. And I'm so grateful that you joined us. I was really inspired by our conversation last week at Double Bay, and you did really change my son. Like, not change, but he's really excited, like, to sit in the car, but he did have that conversation with you. So thank you so much.
That's what I mean. Sorry, excuse my cat, but that's what I mean. Like,
yeah, it's really beautiful. Yeah.
I'm a person that isn't going to be seen as nagging if I try to encourage something. Sometimes I imagine as a parent it can be difficult to have certain influence over your children, but if it's coming from an external source that they don't, especially if they perceive them in high regard because they have a fancy car, to me that's a real opportunity to have an influence. And so that makes me happy to think that might have been the case in that day.
Yeah, maybe do the podcast from your cars, that might even have more impact. Imagine that. Yeah. There you go. There's a niche for you. All right, brilliant. So good to talk to you. I'll post this on you. If anyone has any other questions before we jump off, let me know. I only had the ones around what would you say to your younger self. Someone said that a Lamborghini can be like a puppy dog. Yeah, thank you for that. That makes sense, as in to connect to people as a talking point.
Right.
Any other questions? Drop them in. Otherwise, thank you again. Went slightly over time, as I often do. You've been amazing. And if there's anything, if any sort of last final message you want to give my women specifically, please share.
I guess all I would say is, like, I think what's really important to me, assuming that, like, attracting a partner is important and maybe the focus, I think trying to be the softest version of yourself can be very important. That doesn't mean that you should allow someone to be abusive. Absolutely not. There's a time to be assertive and to draw boundaries. That's definitely the case. But trying to bring peace to a man's life, I think, is one of the easiest ways to get access to their heart.
Yeah, because, beautiful.
Yeah, because it can be a difficult world for a man. Not all men, and I know that's not what we're taught from the media, but carrying a lot of burden and responsibility comes with stress. And if someone that's doing that is able to find a woman that can be his place of nurture and compassion, I think that's a very good way to build a solid relationship.
I might even use that as a quote. Softening is a beautiful way to get into a man's heart. Yeah, that's beautiful.
There you go.
Yeah, I love that. That can be the quote to the post. Thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.